Welcome back, everybody, to Two Guys and a Stack of Comics. Hope everybody's having a great week. Mike and I rounding out the week here with our best new comics of the week, although a very, very, very light week of comics this week. And to be honest, there is no comic that I can kick off with and just say this was exceptional this week. However, there was one really notable comic that did come out. Um, Absolute Green Lantern #1. So our, I believe, sixth Absolute Universe title. There's the kind of A cover there. Al Ewing, and I believe it's Lindsay on the art. So debut, and I
Didn't
gotta say,
Martian Manhunter come out last week?
Martian Manhunter was last week. We talked a little bit about that one. Flash. And so I think if kind of like if you ranked them, I think Absolute Batman's been the best one so far. I think I liked Absolute Flash #1 a lot. I would say Wonder Woman's probably third, Superman fourth, and then Martian Manhunter. It will probably just take time. I think some folks loved it. It was just a bit eclectic.
Yeah.
Um, I will say I think this was the worst debut of the Absolute Universe so far. I don't know that I will come back for a second issue on this, and the reason I'll say that is. It's more to do with what they chose as the plot than it is actually execution of it. I don't think this is a poorly written comic book. It didn't really strike me as a great comic, but it wasn't badly constructed as far as if you just took the plot on its own. The art is a little manga-esque in my opinion. Maybe that's not the right word, but it's not bad. It's not my style certainly, but it's not bad art. I don't think anything from an execution standpoint was awful. And I think there's going to be people who like it. My main issue with this has to do with the fact that this guy right here, Hal Jordan, is buried in the back of the cover to where you got to zoom in real close to find it. And it only gets worse from there in that
Poor
um,
Hal.
Hal Jordan is Black Hand in this universe. So the Green Lantern villain Black Hand, responsible for, the Blackest Night event and all that kind of stuff. He
It wa-
essentially he's a tortured victim, but he is essentially the threat in this comic so far in the first issue. We see him accidentally kill a cop. We see him accidentally appears wipe out a cafeteria full of people. And while they certainly portray it that Hal is trying not to do these things, at the end of the day, the illusion is he is the threat that Joe Mullen, the main character, will have to stop. John Stewart is in the book. I don't really know what they were doing with John Stewart. He kind of just seemed to be there to be there. But Hal is a bad guy and a lantern created, I think, in the last 5 years as the new one for a new launching on point of Absolute Green Lantern. I don't really get the approach. We knew this was coming, so it's not a huge surprise. But Mike, what do you think about structurally what they decided to do there, and just your overall read on what they're trying to do with this book?
I don't know. I mean, if you have a Green Lantern, if you're a Green Lantern fan, you like to see stories of all the various different lanterns, but they all started with Hal. So if you're going to
Mhm.
build a new alternate universe and have Hal in different circumstances, I mean, I don't know. I just feel like it's a bit of let's play opposite day again with superheroes. And
Mhm.
I never really like that too much. Um, I never really liked that too much. And you got Marvel on the other side. They're turning Mary Jane to Venom.
No,
It's
yeah, I think
it's
it's just, I think it's too much overthinking, and I think it's too much. One of the frustrating things, one of the most frustrating things in life for me as a sports fan when I watch a basketball game and a guy has an easy layup and they try to do a dunk and they miss the dunk. And it's like, just take the layup,
yeah.
right? To me, DC in this instance, this is a layup that they missed, and that Joe Mullen, I know that Far Sector comic has its fans, but let's just be frank, she hasn't taken off as a character in the 5 or 6 years she's been around. She's never had a solo book outside of that 12 issue series that was specifically designed for her that's lasted. Green Lantern, when you think Green Lantern, it's Hal Jordan or it's John Stewart. Those are the two characters. And really, John Stewart is much more a product of the DC animated universe. I love John Stewart. He's a great character. he mainly came to prominence because of the animated series. You also have Kyle Rayner, who had a book for a long time. You've got Guy Gardner, who's had a book for a long time.
I think, the fans would have loved like a team up, with Jon Stewart and Hal Jordan. I
And it
think,
looks like they
you know,
may do a team element because all three are in there, but when you set Hal Jordan as the threat of the first arc,
yeah, it's unfortunate.
and I know people are going to go, well, Parallax in the 90s. Well, I don't know many people whose favorite Green Lantern story is when Hal Jordan, Emerald Twilight, when he went crazy, killed all the Green Lanterns, became
That
Parallax.
was a rough storyline. That was really rough. And
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 again,
it's
if you're
like,
a
so
Kyle Rayner fan, maybe you like that because that was Kyle Rayner's origin point. The thing with me with the Absolute Universe, Absolute Batman, yes, it's different, and I don't want to be a hypocrite here. And that look, this is supposed to be a different universe. But what I will say is, Absolute Universe, yes, Batman is different in Absolute Batman, but it's still Bruce Wayne. He's still smart. He's still Batman. He's still a hero. Wonder Woman, it's magic involved, there's different things, but she's still an Amazon who is Wonder Woman and fights for good. Superman's a little edgier, but he's still a Kryptonian fighting for good. Flash, Barry Allen died, and we weren't huge fans of that, but Wally West's being the Flash was precipitated by Barry's death in Crisis. Martian Manhunter is a little weird, but it's still John Jones. And this to take the main character of Hal and make him a villain, it would be more like if Absolute Batman had been actually Catwoman is Batman, or not even because Joe Mullen's not even Catwoman relevance. It'd be more like spoiler: Stephanie Brown is the Absolute Batman, and Bruce Wayne is Two Face, and that would just be a weird approach to take. And I think where it's an unfair thing that I think they've done, and I just think it's not thinking it out fully. I didn't hate this comic book in terms of what it was. It's not poorly written, it's not poorly drawn, but you're going to put this. I'm not going to keep reading it because I don't want to see Hal Jordan be a bad guy. That's not, especially because what this was supposed to be promising is Absolute Universe with new launching on points, that kind of stuff for folks. If you don't know anything about Green Lantern, start here, kind of thing. If you don't know anything about Batman, start here. And yes, all of us comic fans know it's an alternate universe. Yes, I can still read the main great Green Lantern title by Jeremy Adams, but I just think it was a missed opportunity to put that in there. And I think for the Joe Mullen character, where this is going to be, when your starting point is the first 5 pages of the main Green Lantern who has sustainably held that role, held that title, and sold that book, when it's him killing people and being a villain, that's going to hit a lot of people the wrong way who are Green Lantern fans. And I think it's going to put this book on a very, very difficult track to go. And then Joe Mullen to me just doesn't make sense as the selection. And that even of the newer Green Lanterns, they really pushed Simon Baz quite a bit. They pushed that Jessica Cruz character quite a bit. She's kind of like the eighth or ninth choice of Green Lantern that you would pick. And so it's just to pit her against Hal again, it's sort of Stephanie Brown spoiler versus Bruce Wayne in a comic, and I'm supposed to want to see spoiler win. It's like, man, you can do that, but man, that is a tough, tough path to take.
yeah,
Um,
it's
do
gonna
do
take
you
a
think
lot.
this was? I mean, do you think, Mike, part of this is they were over think do you think there's a message they're trying to send with this of like Hal is done? Do you think it's maybe they just overthought it, or do you think they just thought, hey man, here's the wildest pitch we can throw, let's do that? Like, what if you had to, where do you
I
think they're kind of at on it?
I come down on one of the last two that you said. I think they're probably brainstorming and kind of out of ideas. And whenever they run out of ideas, they do the old switcheroo. Good guys, it's opposite day. Good guys, bad guys, good guy. And
Mm.
so I think they started gelling with that idea, and then I think they said, well, we'll just swing for the fence with it unless anyone's got anything else. Going once,
Yeah.
going twice. Okay. Like sometimes when you're in the board meeting and you're like, okay, we got to come up with a plan for X, Y, and Z. And you're all thinking about the other three projects that you have going on simultaneously. And you're kind of going, I don't know what kind of ideas you got. I kind of think that's the way it is, and um, these things are run on deadline. The deadline was probably sometime last year, and you're
They
like, all
just
right,
threw it.
we'll roll with
You
it.
know, the only thing that concerns me about it is I don't think this was an intentional, like, I hate Hal Jordan kind of thing. The writer Al Ewing is probably the writer I struggle most with in comics, and I just don't.
Hmm.
I'm not a fan of Al Ewing. I was reading Hulk for years, and I know a lot of people loved Immortal Hulk. Immortal Hulk made me drop the book for the first time, and I know there are people who think that's one of the greatest. So that might have just been me, right? But it was just at the end. I'm like, what am I reading here? I had previously read Thor for probably a decade. Al Ewing took over Thor. I'm no longer reading Thor, and it
He
wasn't.
boldly goes where no story's gone
He
before sometimes.
basically has this is five or six Venom. I had been reading Venom basically since Venom's inception, and he even before he decided to do this thing of making Mary Jane Venom, he did a really complex run where he made Dylan Brock Venom instead of Eddie Brock, and there was a lot of time traveling things. It's just I dropped that. And so Al Ewing's a hard sell for me on comics, and I know he's got his fans. I'm not going to say he's a bad writer. I think it's just something where his plots and things to me don't. It's not that they're overly complicated and I don't get them. It's just more like, why is that the direction that we chose? And I think both with Venom this week with Mary Jane and with Joe Mullen as Green Lantern from the same writer, it just seems some people probably love it because he's throwing wild stuff out there. And maybe if you're somebody who's like, hey man, I want a crazy change up, that might be for you. It just I would have preferred in both instances a safer choice, a better choice, a more solid choice. And I think in both instances, with both this absolute Green Lantern and with Mary Jane being Venom in the other book he's writing, I think he has chosen a path that is going to have a lot of resistance. And unfortunately, what I don't like about that is it's going to create a lot of stupid conversations about these where
It's
people are going
interesting.
to extrapolate more out of it than is actually there.
You're right, and we're probably doing way too much of that. But you would think it was almost like it was almost like if you were gonna do good guy, bad guy, good guy, opposite day with your hero, wouldn't it be, you know, cool if, like in the situation of Green Lantern, you've got John Stewart right there, like a
Yeah,
known lantern, be the one who takes Hal, gets him out of the clutches of the hand.
yeah, I think that's the thing is it's just pitting Joe Mullen versus Hal Jordan, and I'm supposed to that's man, that's gonna and who knows? It's one issue. They could swerve it, and Hal ends up being good or something. But I think for your initial first pitch kind of thing to have Hal Jordan's gonna kill multiple innocent people in this issue, even by accident, even though they portray it as he was trying to be noble, and it's at the end of the day, the threat that appears to need to be stopped is Hal Jordan. That's a tough sell. And I know there's other popular lanterns, but he's as much as people don't like, he's the main guy. He is, and he is the first Green Lantern ring wearer guy. You've got Alan Scott. That's a different thing. He
You
wasn't Green
do.
Lantern Corps and Oa and all that stuff. He was very, very different. And so, yeah, it's difficult. And again, I'm never a fan. I was not a fan of the '90s stuff with Emerald Twilight when they made him go bad. I'm never a fan of when you take these classic characters who created by the giants who made this industry, and you decide to make them take an evil turn. I think when you look at, it's Gil Kane, I believe, who created him, correct? Gil Kane.
Gil
You've got
Kane
him. You've got Infantino who created Barry Allen. You've got all these guys who foundationally built DC
and
to
John
take their
Broome wrote a lot of
creations.
those old. John Broome
Yeah,
was the writer.
Brome, yeah. It's a tough sell. But let us know. I'm not gonna say I'm not gonna sit on here and trash it and say I think, if you just take it on surface level, it's not a poorly written comic. It's not something where I would sit there and go, God, that was terrible or anything. It went a direction I don't think is gonna be successful, but could be wrong. Let us know what you guys think. I'm sure the first issue will sell well. I do think if there's any of these absolute titles that might go quickly, I think that could be it though. But if you disagree or agree, let us know. I'll run quickly through what was the rest of my stack this week. Mike, I know Diamond kind of got you again, so we'll have like a mega catch up for you in the next week. But I did pick up all new Venom from Mary Jane. Venom, just
He
Yeah,
picked
I don't
him.
have much to say about that. We did a whole video on it. It didn't even make any more sense. I thought, you know what? We did a video. Let me pick it up. Let me see if something. It still makes absolutely no sense. And they
Okay.
actually wrote something really weird, and that like Robbie Robertson has like instantly recognized that it was Mary Jane, meaning that like Robbie Robertson is supposedly smart enough he could figure that out. So I'm like, but how has he worked next to Spider-Man for all these years? Just
Yeah. He's just
yeah,
gone a lot, He's gone a lot.
overthinking it.
Yeah.
Yeah. The good from this week. Moon Knight Fist of Khonshu #7. I think this was actually a pretty clever comic book. I gotta say, this is Jed McKay on Moon Knight. It's sort of like just a reliably good cheese pizza. It's nothing amazing. It's nothing that you're like, oh my gosh, that's incredible. It's just a solid comic book every month it comes out. It's got decent humor, good characterization, cool action scenes, pretty cool use of Hank Pym this week from it as well. And a really, I thought, kind of poignant thing about fatherhood at the end, which was actually kind of cool. And that like there's a through line of Hank Pym has the ability to be reunited with his son, and Moon Knight kind of gives him a thing of like Hank Pym's telling him like, I don't think I should do it, it's too dangerous. And Moon Knight, who's had a daughter, goes like, look, I literally don't have the opportunity, you do, take it, kind of thing. And I thought that was a really somewhat poignant message to be in there. I liked that. So kudos to Jed McKay on that. Not loving his X-Men, but I think he's doing great there. JSA #6, Jeff Lemire continues to do really good on this. I'm not even really attached to most of the JSA characters, but he did a great job. There is a rather large death in this comic book. I'm sure it's a death that will last all of 6 months, but overall, pretty poignant issue. I thought it was pretty good, and that's a really good ongoing comic book. If I had a couple standouts this week, Daredevil, Cold Day in Hell. This is sort of the Dark Knight Returns for Daredevil. And yes, I know that's a concept that has been done to death for every character. But Charles Soule and Steve McNiven, this is a little bit of the art there. Matt is basically like 60. There's a catastrophe kind of thing that's happened. He lost his powers and then he temporarily gets it back at the end. It was an interesting concept. And I do think at the very least they wrote Matt Murdock well. It could absolutely fall apart. Also, kind of cool to see Frank Miller on the covers. I'm not the biggest Frank Miller art fan of his anymore, but I think anytime Frank Miller wants to do anything with Daredevil, you let him. And then
Yes, absolutely.
Absolute Superman #6, last one. I think this was pretty good. This explored what happened with the Kents, how he came to Earth, answered a lot of questions. I do feel like maybe I was a little overly harsh on Absolute Superman as it came out, as I want to say I think they've had 2 good issues in a row now that they put out. So hopefully that is a mark of a turnaround for them. Only other thing was a Batman facsimile from this week from Hush. So Batman 614 with Jim Lee, but very, very light week in comics. Very rare that I only have like that's the totality of my stack is 5 or 6 books. So it was weird. I noticed not a lot of good indies this week, at least not ones that I'm reading. I'm waiting for my Ghost Machine books and stuff like that. But let us know. What did you guys have this week? What did you think about the books? If you have any thoughts or anything that you agree or disagree with, please let us know down below. As always, folks, thank you guys for watching. God bless you. We'll catch you in our next video.
Thanks, everybody.